Okay, so now we're going to look at some equations that actually need simplifying before you can start solving. So this is that first step that we've been talking about over and over, where it says simplify each side. Up until this point, the only simplification we really had to do was, adding the opposite or doing the additive inverse. But at this point, there's actually more to do. So reviewing our steps, we're going to simplify each side. Remembering our goal, isolate that variable. Then we undo our addition, undo our multiplication, and check our answers. So our what if for this section is what if one or both sides of the equation has an expression that contains like terms? And let's actually make that a question mark. So what's going to happen if one side has an expression that contains like terms? Well, we're going to simplify the expression before solving. So we actually get to do more with our simplify each side step. Now this screen is an optional whether you want to add that to your notes. I definitely feel like this section would benefit you to have written. So we're just going to jump straight into an example. So remember, step one is simplifying each side of our expression. Now, first thing we look for is this subtraction sign here. And we need to change that to addition, and the next number becomes the opposite, right? And I'm just going to copy down the rest of my equation. Okay, so don't forget our additive inverse still needs to happen. So now at this point, we take a look at the expression on the right-hand side of our equation. Because the left-hand side, there's nothing to simplify. But on the right, I can actually combine like terms. And if we take a look, let me erase this. If we take a look at this right-hand side, I have x and another x. So I can actually combine 3x plus 4x and get 7x. So this is that first simplifying step. Look on each side and see, is there anything I can simplify? Can I combine anything? Can I multiply anything? What can I do over here? Because our goal with simplifying is to have a two-step equation. So once I combine like terms, I now have an equation that you've practiced many, many times. You know exactly what to do from this step here. We undo our addition first, adding 2 to both sides. I get 14 equals 7x. Undo our multiplication by multiplying each side by the reciprocal of this coefficient. You can either multiply and get 14 over 7 or do some cross simplification and you end up with x equals 2. So remember, once we do our simplifying step here, combining like terms, then I have a nice two-step equation, something that you've seen many, many times. And this section right here is major review. Let's look at another example. First thing we look for is simplify each side. I have no subtraction to deal with. So this is the point where we look and see, what can I do? Well, I have all addition, and I have x is here, x is here. I'm going to go ahead and use the commutative property so I can rearrange and get my x's next to each other. This is a step that you should do, especially now that we have equations. Things get a little more difficult, and expecting your brain to do a lot at once opens yourself up to making silly mistakes. So do take a second and rewrite your equation with your x's together so that it's very easy to see 7x plus 2x is 9x. Now I'm going to write some steps to the side. Copy those down for this example. It's not something you have to do on your work, but it would be helpful while we're practicing. So first I commuted, then I'm going to combine like terms. Now I have a two-step equation. Done this a million times. I want to undo my addition, so get rid of this positive 6 with a negative 6. So undo our addition, and I get 9x equals 0. Undo multiplication by multiplying each side by the reciprocal. Remember, it's okay to have a 0. Just remember anything times 0 is 0. And you end up with x equals 0 as your answer. Look at another example. Remember, our first step is to simplify. So I'm going to recopy. Because I have subtraction here, I need to handle that. First term stays the same. Subtraction becomes addition. The next term becomes the opposite. So I get negative 10 equals 5x plus negative 7x plus 8. That's the additive inverse. Now I don't have to commute anything because my x's are together right here. So I can go ahead and just combine like terms. 5x plus negative 7x. I look at the 5 plus negative 7 is negative 2. I combine like terms, right? So 5x plus negative 7x is negative 2x, and now we have a nice, easy two-step equation. We're going to undo our addition first. Positive 8 and negative 8 cancel and make 0. So I'm going to add a negative 8 on both sides. Now this is negative 10 minus 8. But again, in our heads, that gets a little confusing. So let's look at this as negative 10 plus negative 8. It's the same exact thing. It's just a different way of looking at the numbers. Negative 10 plus negative 8 is negative 18. Bring down our negative 2x. Now I undo multiplication by multiplying each side by the reciprocal of this coefficient. Now remember, a negative times a negative is a positive, so I know my answer is a positive number. You can simplify at the beginning or simplify at the end, but either way, you end up with x equals positive 9. So again, once we simplify, once we handle that simplification step, then we have a nice two-step equation, which you've been solving over and over and over again. Nice and easy. All right, let's look at another one. It's got a little longer. The process still is the same. We're going to simplify each side first. And before I start combining anything, I'm going to handle all of my subtraction first. Again, don't do too much at once. That's when us as teachers, we start seeing all kinds of crazy mistakes when you're trying to skip steps and save yourself time, and you end up with a wrong answer. So slow down, take your time, take a minute and do the extra steps to ensure that you are getting the correct answer. So let's change our subtraction to addition first. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to rearrange based on what my like terms are. I'm going to take my x's and rewrite them in the front. And then take my constant numbers, my constants, and put them in the back. This might be the time where you circle your x's, put a square around your constants, color code, those type of things, just so that you can see what's alike. Or if you can see it, you just go ahead and rearrange that now. So this is commutative property. our additive inverse, right? So now I combine my 5x and my negative 8x to negative 3x. Negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3 equals 4. I combined like terms. Now I have a two-step equation. Very simple. First thing we do is undo addition. I have a negative 3 I need to get rid of. It needs to become 0. So I add 3 to both sides. I get negative 3x equals 7. Then we undo multiplication by multiplying each side by the reciprocal. Be careful. Make sure that you're giving yourself enough room. You're not smashing everything in here. That's when we start seeing errors as well. People start forgetting negative signs, all kinds of stuff. Now I have a crazy fraction here, but it's okay. You can have a fraction as an answer. It's all right. My left side cancels. On the right, a positive times a negative is negative. I multiply across, and I get negative 7/3, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with the fraction as an answer. So again, once we get through this simplifying process, we have a nice two-step equation. All right, next up is your guided practice. Pause the video, copy the problem down, and try it on your own. Then push play and check your steps in your answer and see how you did. You should be practicing correct pre-algebra steps. No guessing and checking. No, don't show me scratch work. Look through your examples and mimic the process. I should see the simplifying, then the addition undoing, then the multiplication undoing. You do not need to write the words to the side to describe your steps. Use those on the examples to help guide you. So hit pause and try this on your own. Okay, go ahead and take a look at each of my steps. We have our simplifying step first. Gets us our nice two-step equation. Undo our addition, then undo our multiplication. Now here's number 2. Take a second and look at this, copy it down, and try it on your own. Okay, now since this is a pretty massive equation here, let's actually go through this together. I will go through pretty quickly though. So we're going to copy everything down, getting our additive inverse completed. Then I'm going to commute just so that I get everything together. It's worth doing this extra step to make sure that I don't have any mathematical errors that could be avoided. So again, there's nothing wrong with taking an extra step to make sure that you're correct. Now I have 3 values with an x. You want to try to add those all in your head at once? That's up to you. But again, in situations like a quiz or a test, that's when your brain starts making small, silly errors. Those times where you look at your quiz or your test and you say, oh, that was the stupidest error ever. Most of the time, that's because your brain is trying to do too much at once in a stressful testing situation. So I'm just going to take 2 at a time. Just so that I can make sure that I'm doing everything correctly. So I get 15x, and then when I add it to negative 3x, I get 12x. Now I have a nice 2-step equation. Should be very easy. So now I have something very simple. Now, this first part was our simplify step, right? Once we simplify, then we get ourselves down to a 2-step equation, remembering our goal, solve for the variable, get that variable by itself, undo addition first, add 2 to both sides. I end up with 12x equals negative 24. Undo our multiplication by multiplying each side by the reciprocal. And whether you cross simplify to start, multiply across, and then simplify, your answer is x equals -2. And that's it.